our golf swing are hips. So particularly hip internal rotation. So if I'm a right-handed golfer, the ability to turn into my right leg on my backswing, the ability to turn into my left leg on my downswing. So looking for hip mobility there. So the way we test that is I have the person lie on their back, and from here, I'm just gonna ask them to put their fists between their knees, and they're gonna rotate their feet out as far as they can, keeping their knees touching their fists. What we should see is that they have about 40 to 45 degrees of hip internal rotation bilaterally. And you can see I'm not the best with this activity. What we know is that for normal kind of daily life, that about 30 degrees of hip internal rotation is adequate, but for our rotary sports, particularly golf, since it's such a rotary sport, we'd like to have a little bit more than just average, so closer to 40, 45 degrees. Our tour players, almost all of them have closer to that 40, 45 degrees, or even more, particularly with some of our LPGA players. Because we know that if whatever motion that you have, if you have only 30 degrees of hip rotation, that your body's probably not going to take it to the end range of motion. It doesn't feel strong, it doesn't feel comfortable there. So we're probably only getting about 25 degrees of usable motion there. So same thing with golf. We want to be able to maximize how much motion we have so that you have more usable motion. The problems that we see is when people are lacking hip rotation, then we start to see some compensations. So if I can't rotate at my hips, then do we start to sacrifice some motion through the lumbar spine? And we kind of talked about that, how that can lead to lower back pain or problems. Or we may also start to see some swing faults. So if I can't rotate through my hips, do I start to do some more of a lateral motion, some of that lateral sway, which can cause a problem maybe on the outside of my hip in terms of pain, but also some deficiencies with ball striking and difficulty to make good solid contact because you're kind of moving off the ball and then have to come back towards it. So hip rotation is going to be super important. We can also check the hip rotation passively. So checking that, do they have adequate range of motion, yes or no? The other test that we can use if you're like, you know what, I'm on the driving range, I don't really want them to necessarily lie on their back because the grass is wet, whatever. We can actually use a golf club and have them standing. Now we're just going to take the golf club and just place it right across the hip bones. So if they have a belt on, just right across their belt buckle. And making sure you hold it on either side, kind of right by the ASIS. From here, we can check one leg at a time. So we're going to stand on our left leg. And just the right toe is just in the back. We're going to get the right leg out of the way, but we're going to have our toe down for some balance. From here, we're going to turn our hips, turn our body to the left as far as we can, making sure this stays on our hips. And we're going to measure the angle of the rotation, or how much the club actually rotates in relation to the ground. So because this isn't checking just hip rotation, it's checking our tibial rotation and some other things, the number we're looking for here is about 60 degrees, right? So from here, turning 60 degrees. Right. One of the big things to look out for with this one is making sure that they actually keep the club across their hips and not letting it come out like that. That would obviously be cheating, and it's going to give you a false number. So that's looking at left hip internal rotation, and we can do the same thing on the right, turning and looking at right hip internal rotation. Again, the number we're looking for here is 60 degrees because we've added some lower limb rotation in it as well. So it's not just hip rotation, but it's definitely an option if you can't lie down or you're just trying to do a quick screen on the golf course.